Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Strategic Business Influencer, my new series for leaders who know that in today's evolving world, trust is the greatest competitive advantage. My guest today is Travis McAshan, founder and CEO of Glide, an award-winning digital creative agency based in Austin, Texas, and a certified B Corporation, a designation recognizing companies that meet the highest standards of social and environmental impact. For nearly 2 decades, Travis has led a purpose-driven team that designs beautiful, functional, and high-performing online experiences for startups, nonprofits, and beloved brands, all with the goal of making a positive impact in the world. Since launching Glide in 2003, he has overseen more than 750 projects, grown a diverse team across 7 countries, and earned the agency national recognition from Up City, Clutch, and the Austin Business Journal, and a spot on the coveted Inc. 5000 series list of fastest growing private companies in Texas. A Texas A&M architecture grad, which I will forgive you for one of these days, and serial entrepreneur, Travis is also a dedicated husband, father of 4, and active community member. So whether he is serving staff at his church, traveling to meet his global team, or perfecting the backyard ninja course, which he built for his family, which I would love to hear about, Travis brings some of the same mix of creativity, discipline, and the heart of everything that he does. I am so excited to have Travis on this because every time I talk to him, he is sharing some nugget of wisdom. He is a lifelong learner. So I'm just so excited to have you, Travis. Welcome on this series.
Wow, that was I can you be my like hype man and just and come with me to all my sales calls and just start with that introduction because I would close every deal. That was amazing. Thank you, Paige, and I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to get into your story because we come from, somewhat similar worlds, the agency world, and I just learned so much from you and what you've done with your business. And so I want to talk about when you founded Glide back in 2003. This is before there were a ton of digital agencies. They weren't as common at that point as they are today, and so I'm curious what that origin story is and what made you believe that this was the path that you wanted to commit to for the long haul.
Yeah, yeah. I'll try to answer that without going back to the age of 4. But it really does honestly start, when I was 4 years old, I thought I wanted to be a professional architect
Mm.
and a pro surfer. And so, fast forward to graduating college, I got my degree in architecture, so I missed out on the surfing part. But I got the degree in architecture, and but interestingly, my senior year of my degree, I just realized that my passion wasn't for designing buildings; it was digital. And I had been on a
Mm.
computer since the age of 7, 1985. I received an Amiga 500 from my grandparents. It was like the world was open to me. The first multitask
Yeah.
computer, 256 colors, deluxe paint. It was awesome. And so I basically been on a computer every day since the age of 7. And so, I just knew that my path was digital. And so really I just took all of these amazing principles from the digital realm, from the physical realm into the digital realm. One of my favorite like quotes, the Shaker philosophy is like, don't make something unless it is both necessary and useful. But if it is both necessary and useful, don't hesitate to make it beautiful. And
Mm.
so there's just this part of me as an architect, your left and right brain. And, you have to think about how do you make something structurally sound, but how do you make it beautiful? How do you make it functionally beautiful? And I just love that ethos. And so as I graduated college, I immediately got a job as a graphic designer at a college. And it's funny because I didn't go to school for graphic design. I went to school, got an architecture degree. And
Right.
so, I had like the dummy's guide to graphic design, like hidden on my desk because I didn't want my boss to see it. And so, from there, I was teaching myself how to create websites in my spare time. Like I would come in early, I would stay in late. I'd be at work until like 9 o'clock. The office would be empty. And
Mm.
I would be teaching myself how to code HTML websites. This was again back in the early 2000s. And I think like 2001, 2002. And so that was where I kind of cultivated this love for the digital. And when I left that company, I first started a company called Pixona, which was kind of like Vimeo. They pivoted toward the business side where YouTube pivoted toward the consumer side.
Mhm.
So Pixona was the same kind of concept, but well before Vimeo. And I think that we were so far ahead of our time that, broadband wasn't even adopted fully in the United States. So we were dealing with dial-up connections and it
Wow.
was just, it's that company didn't work, although it taught me a lot about creativity and user experience. And then I started Glide. And so, the really short version of that is just that I was driving home from this previous job in Oregon where I had back to my home in Austin. I didn't have a home. I had my city, and my car broke down. And by the time I got back, I on the way back, I found out that I had no job. My car broke down, and I used up the rest of my money. So when I arrive in Austin, I have no home, no job, and my bank account is negative $200.
Mm.
And I'm staying with a friend, and that's how I started Glide. So I think Glide was like ultimately started out of necessity, right? Like I have to do
Right.
something, and so literally walk across the street to the condo of my friend's house and ask, like, I will draw a stick figure on a piece of paper for $50, like whatever I got to do. And that's what I did. This guy had this slat wall company, and I drew a mascot for him, and he paid me $50. So that was like one of my first deals at Glide, which is funny because it's not even digital. But anyway, um,
Please
that's
tell me
that.
you still have that somewhere.
You know what? I actually looked it up on the Wayback Archive, and it's Mr. Slatwall, and I found him. I turned it into an animated GIF where he's like waving his hands side to side like this. Anyway, so it was just this deep desire to serve, and when I started Glide, I read a book pretty early on called Web Design for ROI, like back in the early 2000s, and I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to live my life to be useful for other people. I love the digital realm. And, so web design, I created three kind of core tenets for Glide, which was kind of our purpose, which is like, I want to create raving fan clients. I read the book by Ken Blanchard, Raving Fans. I'm like, I want to create raving fans. So raving fans, I want to make amazing websites, and I want to create tangible bottom line results. And so we just kind of went to work, doing that. That's how it all started.
Wow, I never knew that story. That is wild. And what heart, what hustle just right from the beginning, knowing that, hey, I've got to do something. And I love that you're already dropping so many books as well, because I know that's something you're such an avid reader and lifelong learner. So
Yeah.
I would love to talk about, Glide being this trusted partner that you've built for brands. And a lot of the brands that you work with have impact at the forefront of what they do. And so I want to know, how do you earn and keep a high level of trust when you are responsible for creating the brand, for the repetition of the brand, how their customers see and perceive the brand? That's a lot of responsibility.
It is. It is, and you're kind of speaking to something even more fundamental, which is like our why, right? So
Mm.
2015, I'm burned out. I've been doing the same thing, it just in repetition for almost 10 years or more than 10 years, kind of feeling like, wow, is this all there is?
Mhm.
I remember at one point I was like, should I just quit and go be a high school football coach? At the time I was serving as a volunteer youth pastor, and I really love working with young people, and just speaking life into people. But I saw a TED talk by Simon Sinek called Start with Why.
Mm,
And,
mhm.
a lot of folks that are listening to this or watching this, will probably have seen that. And I read the book too, which is completely unnecessary. It's like 300 pages, and you can get the whole thing in 10-minute TED talk. But it really just forced me to say, why in the world do I wake up every day and come and sit in front of this computer all day? And so for a year and a half, I asked myself, why do I do this? And I didn't have like a fundamentally clear answer immediately. It just took a really long time. And the conclusion I came to was, man, if I had $100 million, if I was going to die in a year, I would still be working because
Mhm.
I have to be useful. And I was like, if I want to be working, it's going to be something big and amazing because like, why else not go big or go home?
Right.
And if I'm going to do something big and amazing, I'm going to need help. I can't do it by myself because all big things happen with people, with a group of people or with the people in collaboration. But then I realized, well, it's not going to be for us because that's selfish. It's going to be for other people. So that means not only do I want to work with great people, I want to work for great people. And so, but then I was like, okay, well, why do people do work? Like,
Mhm.
and to me, it started to come down to it's like, it's got to be meaningful. It's got to make a difference. And so that was my why. So it was to work with great people, for great people, to do meaningful work that makes a difference. And when I came to that four kind of points, it was like someone rang a bell. And I was like, I want to make that statement more true every day than the day before for the rest of my life. And so I know that's a really long-winded answer to your question about brand shepherding brands, but like I think it's incredibly important because like when you're coming from a why, it's like you can weather any what if you know what your why is. Or was it I forgot Nietzsche says basically like, it doesn't matter necessarily the what or the how, but like what is your why, And so
Mhm.
long story short, when we're shepherding brands, we're coming from a place of wanting to do meaningful work that makes a difference for great people. And so when you're there for that purpose, you're there for the right reasons, and it makes it a lot easier. And then your North Stars are aligned, your values are aligned, you're heading in the same direction. And I think that it also kind of, when you think about it, I mean, there are disciplines, and you're an agency, we're an
Mhm.
agency, and you have kind of these core disciplines, right? And so, we are not a brand strategy agency. Our core discipline is web design and development, but we have brand strategy and digital marketing kind of as like sister components to that.
Mhm.
Um, so when you're shepherding a brand, sometimes like if that's not your core competency and they're coming in with all of their messaging and positioning and targeting and all that stuff, kind of, your job is to help them facilitate that, happening in the digital realm, to get
Yeah.
exposure. So over time, we came up with a mission statement that would be to help good people and great ideas receive the exposure they deserve. So I would almost say maybe we're not necessarily managing or maintaining the brand as much as we're making sure that it receives the exposure that it deserves.
Mm.
And that's just a privilege and an honor, right? And the neat thing
Absolutely.
about that is even with the advent of AI, it's almost more important, and it's not changing, with AI search coming online in GEO or generative engine optimization or AIO, however you want to call it. um, it's like a whole new generation of challenges
Mhm.
for people that are trying to reach people for good. And so, we take that very seriously. We sent our senior SEO strategist to one of the world's first GEO conferences this year, and she came back with 30 pages of notes, from all
Wow.
of these different experts. And so, yeah, I mean, we're all in on living that kind of purpose, that why, that mission, for these organizations using our business as a force of good.
I love that. And as you know, talking a little bit more about the agency world, today it's pretty crowded. There are a lot of firms out there that do, similar work to what you and I do, and it's often, pretty commoditized. And so I want to know, what's been your most effective strategy for differentiating Glide from thousands of other agencies that maybe provide a similar service?
Yeah, this is an existential question for every agency. The easiest path to differentiation is vertical or horizontal specialization. So vertical specialization is choosing a particular industry or category. So if you only work with B2B technology SaaS companies, or you only
Mhm.
work with, not just healthcare, but say like multi-location healthcare clinics. And so, or that's vertical. And then horizontally, you could specialize just like you guys do with more, your core discipline is more PR. Our core discipline is
Mhm.
more um, well, thought leadership in PR, but our core discipline is web design and development. So but by narrowing the band upon which you operate, you can differentiate. So that's the first order differentiation. And then, the second order differentiation is your POV, your approach, your proprietary technology, so
Mhm.
once you decide, who you're going to serve and then what you're going to offer them, then the next way you differentiate is like, what is your very strong opinion and belief? I'm reading a book by Robin Vaughn, and it has just eaten my lunch. And I really recommend if you are an agency owner or you're a creative in the agency world, read Robin's book. I am like singing his praises. I am, don't tell him this, but I really want to. I've already talked to him, but I want to hire him as a personal coach.
Mhm.
But it's rekindled and revitalized my beliefs. He's got these principles that he goes through, and it starts with believing in better. But his whole premise to the book is that there's not too many agencies. There's just too little differentiation. It's not oversaturation, it's under differentiation. And
Mhm.
so he goes through this whole process of helping you become what he calls a market of one, which is where you're not competing as a commodity anymore. And so when you get past vertical and horizontal specialization, which is the most common way that you can specialize, it's also the most challenging and takes the most courage. Because when you vertically specialize, you're saying no to everything else, which is really
Yes.
challenging. And if you don't have a marketing engine that can get in front of statistically enough of those people in that category, then you're really going to be hurting. Um, but that POV, I guess one question maybe I'd have back for you, maybe to be thinking about. I don't want to put you on the spot page, but like in his book, he calls it the podium test, which is
Mm.
okay, you have to write a speech. There's 1,000 people in the room. 500 are your agency peers, 500 are your ideal clients. Your job is to start with one sentence, and the sentence starts with at company, so at Glide or at Zilker, we believe in blank, blank, blank. And he
Mm.
said the only other caveat to this challenge, this one sentence challenge, is ideally you are going to polarize where 50% of the people in the room are going to be like, hell yeah, and 50% of the people in the room are going to say you're crazy. And so the idea is to just take a stand for something meaningful and take a stand for something that has stakes. And so I've been thinking a lot about this. Like, God, what is what is our reason to believe? What is the thing that we believe in most? And I've been going back to, all the philosophies and things like that. So I think that your POV is extremely important as a way to differentiate.
Mhm.
And, I think that should be clearly stated on your homepage. It should be clearly
Yeah.
stated, in every call you go into. And then also your approach. I think that you can really differentiate as an agency. So at Glide, one of our unique approaches is something we call our signature system. And our signature system is okay, yeah, we can redesign your website. But honestly, I would say one of the things that I would be able to say in front of a room is you should never redesign your website again. I think that would get a lot of people's attention.
Oh, yeah.
So like if I stood up in front of a room and said, at Glide, we think you should never redesign your website again. And what I mean by that is that you really should be in a process of continuous improvement
Mhm.
and improving your site. And we call it website as a product or WAP. The idea is that like when you look at your website as a product, you're continually evolving and improving it over time. HubSpot did a survey of marketing leaders and found that 50% or more make one or less changes every year meaningfully to their website. And there's just so
Wow.
much opportunity on the table, especially in the market we're in where like technology is innovating so quickly and
Mhm.
sites are still sitting stagnant. So anyway, I would say those three. There are other things that I've been ranting. So, differentiation vertically, horizontally. Vertically would be by category or industry. Horizontally would be by service offering, services that you offer. And then, your POV, your approach. And then proprietary technology would be in this day and age with AI. Um,
Mhm.
that would be the last. And I just maybe I'll put this last tidbit in like in Lovable. Like so there's this new platform called Lovable where you can buy code, create apps from chat. I don't know if anyone here is experiencing the new Chat GPT-5. I can't stand it. I think it's awful. And so I recreated Chat GPT's entire interface in 3 hours, like the entire thing,
What?
like the ability to create an account, log in, have
Wow.
threaded conversations, choose models, memories, personalization, projects, of uploading files, all those features. But I brought back the old models that it removed because now it chooses for you.
Yes.
Um, and I got done with it. And I was sitting here looking at this thing going, why do I stop here? Why don't I start creating features that will actually empower my company at Glide
Yeah.
specifically for our processes and methodologies, specifically for our clients? And so my mind is just racing at like 2 in the morning last night, while I'm like vibe coding like crazy. So I think this is proprietary technology, right? This is where you start to kind of
Mhm.
think about like what is our unique approach, our POV, our unique approach, but like never in the history of time has the average person. By the way, I don't know how to code at all. I didn't write a single line of code, not one single
Wow.
one. Is like anyone can create proprietary technology now.
Mhm. That's so wild, and I feel like, you said a lot there that was so key,
Sorry,
and this
it's
is
like
something.
just coming out.
No. No, it's so good because I relate to it so much, even with what we're looking at. I think this is such a quick shifting time in the environment in the space that we're in. And we're right now working on iterating our website. And previously, to be honest with you, Travis, it was a project that we probably did once a year. And now we're, launching new pages, every other week, and we're redoing our messaging because we want to shift our positioning, because exactly like you said, we're always working on differentiation because the landscape shifts so quickly, and there's so much with AI in relation to PR, as you probably know, with discoverability that's changing. So it was just really good to hear you say some of that, because it's reaffirming even what we're, challenged with and going through right now as an agency as well.
Yeah, and I think that, um, I wish I could take credit for this, but, I read an article that just really kind of took me by surprise because I wasn't ready for it. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about AI and our response to AI and how it will change
Mhm.
our industry, and in some ways make websites less relevant, which is our core service offering, which in a way is existential. But at the same time, there's always
Right.
opportunity, or there's always
Oh, yeah.
options, there's always choices. And so I don't look at it as a threat. If you're 17 and you're creating a new company, you see everything as opportunity and tools because you just don't have the pressures. The bigger your agency, WPP is probably like running around. People are running out with their hair on fire, as
Mhm.
like these network and holding companies are just so entrenched with such huge amounts of OpEx. They can't pivot like small companies, and we're small. So we have the
Yeah.
ability to pivot. And, so there was a term that I heard that just blew my mind. It's called AX. So, UX is user experience. User experience is the whole universe of how users experience whatever they experience, whether it's an app or a website. It includes things like UI and user journeys and all these things. But AX is agentic experience, which is like, I think, like, I've always thought about this. Like 10 years ago, I'm like, why wouldn't you just have someone literally on a live stream on your website that they could talk to? How many
Yeah.
people are really visiting the average marketing website, right? Like, could you have
Mhm.
like 5 people just waiting on standby to just talk to someone? Like, wouldn't that be better than me trying to just navigate around a complicated website? And I was like, that's basically what AI is bringing to the forefront as possibility. And so, like, I think that what you're going to end up having is these layers to your website experience where you have all of the meta and the structured data that we already have right now for AI and search, things like that,
Mhm.
that will help even more for AI and search. And then you have the human experience where people can navigate like they normally do. But I think the agentic experience is like, just give me the information that I want right when I want it. Right.
Right.
Like, why do people go to ChatGPT to find an answer? I use it all the time now versus going to Google, and
Oh,
even
yeah.
with Google's AI answers, ChatGPT is just, I think I'm more used to it. And so why don't websites do that? So I just think there's a lot of improvement in room. Like, I would almost wonder, like, wouldn't it be great to talk to you or Rusty or Nicole or any of the team, and get that knowledge into an
Mhm.
experience that people can have a conversation with versus like static text on a page. Are you kidding? Like, we're in 2025,
Right.
like, this isn't sufficient anymore. And so,
Mhm.
it's funny because I'm very motivated to kind of crack this nut, but at the same time, we have to do the work that we have today, right?
That's right. That's right. That's fascinating, and thank you so much for sharing all of that. I wanna talk about a distinction for Glide, which is y'all are a certified B Corporation, which, isn't just a label, it's a big commitment. And so I want you to talk about this for, any CEO or entrepreneur that's maybe thinking about going this route. How has this shaped the kind of clients that you attract and really the way you do business?
Yeah, I think this was an aspiration for many years. I think that I've always operated Glide with a lot of the tenets of B Corp, and then when I found
Mhm.
B Corp, it was like when that kid gets the glasses where he can see color now, and, it's
Yeah.
like, now I can see the world in color or what, as an example. And so B Corp was just this, like, structured framework that put a name to a face that was we were already donating 5% of our money away every year on average. I was just doing that because it just seemed like the right thing to do.
Mhm.
And so when B Corp came along and there's an impact business model that you can choose that they have predefined as designed to give, which is the name of it, which is you donate 5% of your total gross revenue. I was like, well, we'll just get credit for what we're already doing, and
Right.
so I guess in the grand scheme of things, B Corp is interesting, especially in the climate that we're in. ESG and DEI and, a lot of the components of culture and workplace life work balance are under attack. I mean, the
Mhm.
CEO of AT&T basically came out and said, we don't care about your loyalty, we don't care about friendship, you're here to work, and if you're not going to work, you're gone. And this is
Mhm.
one of the largest companies in the world.
Right.
And it's just like we're just seeing a colder, harder world happening. And I'm not going to get political, but it's just so, with a lot of these things, like it is impossible to extract out from B Corp some of these components because it is so entrenched into how you measure. In fact, the new version of B Corp actually has higher standards in a lot of these areas. And so, it's been a challenge for us. But I would say, like, if I were to step back from B Corp, to me, the thing that it has changed the most is that it has galvanized our entire company around this concept of using business as a force of good.
Hmm.
And, that is probably the most important point. I remember when we finally achieved certification, when we hit the score requirement, when we got back that confirmation, and I shared that with the team. It was such a proud moment for me to share with the team. And I knew that when they understood it, that they would see the value in working for a company that cared about those things.
Yeah.
And I think it just creates a very lovable company. When you have a group of people that are working at a company that chooses to operate with the standards that B Corp sets, which is insanely high. Um, I think it creates a culture where people are like, they're proud of where they work.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so cool that y'all got to celebrate that moment as a team after working towards that. I want to talk a little bit about building and scaling an agency. Um, what do you feel like have been the biggest turning points or challenges in growing Glide into the nationally recognized firm it is today?
All right, I'm going to try to be concise because I tend to ramble. I would say in 2015, I hired my first project manager. Up until that point, I was doing a little bit of everything. I had a
Wow.
designer, developer. So, getting out of the weeds of managing the business was a huge step for me. Um, Dan Martell has a book called Buy Back Your Time, and he kind of goes to this ladder approach for entrepreneurs where, he suggests you get an admin that helps you get out of managing your inbox and your calendar first, and then you exit administration and operations, and then you exit marketing, and then you exit sales, and then you exit leadership. And it's like this ladder approach. And
Yeah.
so I think from a scalability perspective, that the number one step, and Michael Gerber talks about this in the E-Myth, where you just create an organizational chart and you put your name in every spot. And then you just look at where do I suck? What takes away all my energy? Okay, I'm going to replace myself there first.
Mhm.
Marcus Buckingham wrote a book called The One Thing You Need to Know. He said the same thing. He's like, what does it take to achieve lifelong sustained career success? And it's like, oh, we'll keep you on suspense on your toes. Like, is it find your strengths and capitalize on them? Is it figure out your weaknesses and fix them? No, it's figure out what you don't like doing and stop doing it. That was his
Mhm.
conclusion after like years of research. So so you take Michael Gerber and you take, Marcus Buckingham, and then Gino Wickman comes along with EOS, and so we use EOS, and we launched that in 2019, and that was a huge shift for us. And honestly, to be honest, I always tell people like, if you want to get in shape, just get a program, write something down and stick to it. That EOS is just
Mhm.
one way to run a business. It just happens to be well documented, and other people do it. And so I think that was a huge benefit for us, but I think that it does have a cap. I mean, they say it can work up to 200 people, but personally speaking, I think that there are limits, and I think that between that one and
Sure.
$5 million realm is a tough place to be. They
Mhm.
call it the uncanny valley because as you grow from 1 million to 5 million, you kind of get to where you need more structure than you can afford.
Right.
And so if you get the structure, it's expensive, and now you're kind of like almost overdeveloping for where your size is, and that was us. Um, and I think the other thing too, I'm a huge fan of Alex Ramosi. He talks about until you get to $1 million, it's one persona, one product, and one channel. That's it.
Mm.
And then once you exceed $1 million, then you can start opening up additional channels. But just, I think that from a scalability perspective, figuring out what the hair on fire problem is and solving that specific problem is the way to grow. And then lastly, I think that where we're at right now at Glide is really kind of to look at our services and saying, how do we productize? So
Yeah.
like I have a theory. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like Ogilvy said, study your competitors and do the exact opposite. And I've been thinking about that a lot because you just asked about differentiation. And the problem
Yep.
is when you show up to a client, you look the same, you act the same, your proposals are the same. And it's like they're going to choose based on price. They're going to choose based on how quick you can do it. They're going to choose based on if you're 3 miles closer to their house. Like,
Mhm.
so how do you differentiate? And if you're not niched down into a even if you are niched down into a category and service, it's still
Sure.
tough to differentiate. So I was just going to suggest, um, like productization could be a way that you could differentiate because you can just be like, here it is right here. Here's how much it costs. Here's how long it takes. We're not going to come back 3 weeks from now with a customized proposal
Right.
that, that's mysterious. Like crap, put your prices on your website, like why not?
Mhm.
So it's just like in the history of time, no one said call me for pricing. They would prefer to call for pricing. And so I
Right.
was like, there's a lot of reasons why agencies don't do that because it's nuanced and custom and blah, blah, blah. But I think that, productization is absolutely the path to scalability. It's because, if you can, so if you can specialize in a category and a service and then productize, like you could rock it to the moon, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that's the other thing about scalability is if you do everything for everyone under the sun, you'll never be able to scale.
That's right.
Maybe not never. That's a limiting belief. It would be very difficult and painful
Yeah.
to scale.
Yes, yes, trying to be everything to everyone. Absolutely. There are two questions, Travis, that I ask anybody that's a guest on this series. The first one is, who are you in addition to being a CEO?
That's super easy for me. Well, my aspiration is I am a great husband and father.
Mm.
So, for the last 7 years or so, I have a morning routine and, exercise, devotion, but then, duty is to sit down and do a journal. Um, and I've been doing this, and I write down 3 things I'm thankful for, and then 5 aspirations of like what I would hope that I could achieve as my life goals. And so as a believer, the first is that I would love God and love others. Um, Number two, it's that I would be the most encouraging person that I can possibly be, because I believe that's why I breathe air is to encourage people. Um, but after that, it's I want to be a great husband and father. So,
Mhm.
my identity is actually more founded in that because at the end of my life, I mean, Buffett, I saw a quote by Buffett the other day about this. He's like, you know, if the people you care about most don't love you at the end of your life, nothing else matters. You could have a bunch of buildings named after you. You
Yeah.
could you could have $400 billion, but that's not a successful life, in my opinion, if the people that are closest to you don't love you at the end of your life. And so for me, my greatest aspiration, my highest calling is to be a great husband and father.
I love that. That's beautiful. And the second question I have for you is, what is the impact that you want to have at the end of every single day?
Ooh, man. One thing I would say would be I'm a huge fan of David Allen's Getting Things Done. So every day I kind of go through my trigger list and next actions. And, you know, um, another favorite author is Brian Tracy. He has a book called Eat That Frog. In fact, I
Oh,
think
yes.
I have it on the shelf over there somewhere. But anyway, so I would say for me, from a work perspective, it would be to eat that frog, which is
Mhm.
like, what is the most important thing that I need to do today? And did I put it off or did I get it done? You know,
Yeah.
um, I have an OBT or one big thing that I write down every day. So when I go through my journal personally, after I write down my 5 aspirations, I write down my 7 goals. And then at the end, I do an OBT or one big thing. And so I look at my 7 goals for the
Mm.
year for myself personally. Some of them are business wise. And I just say, hey, what goal is lagging? What's something that I need to do today to move one of these goals forward? And my goal is to write it down and then just go do it immediately.
I love that. And Eat the Frog, it's so funny. I had a fellow EO member that shared with me to put it on your calendar at the beginning of every day to remind yourself, eat the frog first. And I've done that ever since, and it's huge. It's been a huge life-changing thing for me. Well, Travis, you have just shared so much in, 30 minutes. I feel like we could keep recording and keep recording and keep recording, and I would love to have you back on at some point, but I just appreciate you so much being willing to share authenticity, your journey, your stories and experiences. Anybody listening to this is going to gain so much value. So thank you so much. And I would love for you to share, Travis, if anybody wants to get in touch with you or learn more about Glide, where can they go?
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I would say LinkedIn. I have jumped on the LinkedIn bandwagon. I've been trying to cultivate a healthy profile and presence on LinkedIn. So just find me on LinkedIn. Our website is just glidedesign.com, which is linked in my LinkedIn, or you can just search it, um, and it will likely be found. But it's been just a privilege. I love everything you guys are doing. We've been such great partners over all these years, and you're an inspiration to me.
Oh, thank you, Travis. And thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next time.